that was taken away at the age of 31. My heart broke as a dad of also young kids, as a follower of Christ. My heart broke and yet rejoiced at the same time. You always feel that tension when one of God's children is welcomed home and hears those words, good and faithful servant. But as a conservative, as someone who's in the trenches at Opportunity Arkansas, and we're fighting this fight every single day, just across the board, as an American, as someone who believes and has fought for free speech and the First Amendment, all of these different ways, it felt so personal. And yes, all human life is precious. And I've seen a lot of hateful things online, a lot of skepticism, right? We've all seen it from the left that, well, you know, you don't hold in the image of God with unique value and unique purpose. And in some ways, I want to say, thank God that some of our friends on the left are finally, maybe, I hope, starting to think that way. But of course, what they meant was, well, we shouldn't care as much about Charlie Kirk because you don't care enough about all of these things that I care about and all of these deaths that I care about. And again, it's a good thing that I wasn't here last week because I would have had a lot of things to say. And there were a lot of people saying a lot of things on Twitter, on Facebook, all over social media and the media, the traditional media. I don't know what it is about these tragedies that makes everyone think that we all have opinions, right? And if you're in this space and if you're listening to this show, we're glad that you are. You have opinions. You're engaged. And we've all had a strong reaction to this. I think most people that are in the political world, good or bad, pro Charlie Kirk or anti Charlie Kirk, you've had a reaction to this. But I mean within hours. Like, we don't even know if his parents have been notified yet. And the left is just dancing on his grave. And I just don't understand. I mean, I do in some ways. But it's difficult for me to remember. I'll say this. It's difficult for me to remember a time in our country where it was this dark. And not only are people celebrating, but large groups of people are defending the people that are celebrating. It used to be 15 years ago when I got started in the political world, we all sort of acknowledged that that wasn't okay. And I think there's a lot that goes into it with economic recessions and the pandemic and certainly the cultural rot and everything that we've been through as a country over the last decade. But looking back, you can just almost see it. You can't see it as much when you're in it, but you get about 2 to 3 years down the road, and all of a sudden, a lot of things become very clear. That's the moment where we took a hard turn to the left. That's the moment where we decided it was okay to celebrate the deaths of people that we don't like. That was the moment, and you fill in the blank. So I've spent a lot of time. I had a couple long plane rides this weekend, and reflection and prayer, and I don't have all the answers. No one does on this earth. And if people tell you that they do, I think they're just looking for clicks or media hits or whatever. But this is unprecedented territory in my lifetime. And I wish I had a better answer for how we turn it around. Frankly, when you start to see, and this is happening here in Arkansas, where leftists are going to vigils that have been set up for Charlie Kirk, and they're desecrating them. And they're screaming things that I can't say on the radio about Charlie Kirk and about people that are at these vigils. And it's cliche in so many ways to say, oh gosh, our country is so broken and it's never been this bad. But I think for me and my household, that is as true as it's ever been. We are in a really, really dark place as a country. And again, you can look back and you can see how we got here. From Roe versus Wade on down, where we have stopped even pretending as a culture in so many ways that we do value human life. We've pushed God and faith out of everything, out of schools, all the way down. And so in some ways we shouldn't be surprised, right? But as a dad of young kids, and as someone who's still somewhat relatively young myself, at least I tell myself that most days, it's dark. It's dark. And a lot of conversations with dear friends and family that have been encouraging. You know, look at Scripture. We know this is a broken world. And we know that, I believe things are going to continue to deteriorate in our culture because of the brokenness in this world. So we shouldn't be surprised. But we should be broken. We should be heavy about this. I hope. Look, Romans 8. I spent a lot of time in Romans 8 last week. And God works together all things for good. Not some things, not most things, all things for those who trust in Him. And we've started to see some really cool evidence of that even in the midst of something as horrific as what we saw last week, that there will be hope and that there will be people that are drawn closer to Christ, and that maybe there's an awakening that's coming. And I hope and pray for that more than I ever have in my life. So I haven't given up on the country. I haven't given up on the possibility of that. But I do think we have to be honest about where we are. And there's a lot of people that want to just, well, the young people, we're going to bounce back. I hope so. I have started praying for that earnestly. But it's not going to just happen without some radical change within each of us, within our communities. Oh, and by the way, it's not going to happen through government. I can promise you that. We're not going to all of a sudden pass some big new law with some big new tax credit, with some big new government program that's all of a sudden going to fix these problems. I can promise you that. I can promise you that. Hey, I'm kind of just getting warmed up, but we got to get a break in. If you want to be a part of the show, you can call or text 501-403-5276. That's 501-403-5276. Nick Horton filling in for Steve Finnegan on the Steve Finnegan Show. Stick around. We'll be right back. We're back on the Steve Finnegan Show. Nick Horton, founder and CEO of Opportunity Arkansas, filling in for Steve. Thanks, Steve. I hope you're off somewhere doing something fun, but thanks as always for entrusting me with this seat and with this microphone. Look, I'm going to be honest. I'm all over the place in this first segment. The events of the last week, as you can tell, I mean, they have hit me, as I know so many of you, so hard, and it has been just such a heavy time for our country, our communities, our family. I do want to let you know at the bottom of the hour, going into, after the 4:30 break here, we're going to be joined with State Representative David Ray, who represents House District 69. And if you haven't seen it, I would really encourage you to go over to his Facebook page, State Representative David Ray. And he really, I think, broke this news about a faculty member, a law professor of some sort at the Little Rock Bowen School of Law right here in Little Rock. And talked about this in the last segment, but this visceral reaction from the left, the dancing on the grave of Charlie Kirk, the excitement of a 31-year-old kid being executed in cold blood in public daylight, and two little kids losing their dad. And you would think, oh, well, there's people celebrating in San Francisco. There's people celebrating in New York, right? There's people celebrating in these godforsaken blue cities. Well, guess what? It's happening right here in Arkansas. It's happening all over. I've seen stuff out of the Russellville School District. I've seen stuff out of the Springdale, I believe, School District up in Northwest Arkansas. And I know there's a lot more out there happening that I haven't seen. But this example from a teacher named Felicia Branch, and this has gone a little bit viral now, where Attorney General Tim Griffin has come out and called for her firing. I believe, don't quote me on this, but I believe I saw the governor also said the same. You've got several state legislators now speaking out about this. One of the things we're going to get into with State Representative David Ray, and if you have thoughts about this, please call or text in 501-403-5276, and we'll be happy to get your thoughts and have a little bit of this discussion on the air. But is this appropriate? Like, and by that, I don't mean the comments from Felicia Branch, who is celebrating the death of Charlie Kirk. That is clearly abhorrent and not appropriate. But this idea that we should be calling people out or even calling for their firing if they're celebrating this, I want to hear your thoughts on that. I have some thoughts. We're going to get into that a little bit with State Representative David Ray. He's very clear in his Facebook post that he's not even going to vote for an additional appropriation for the Bowen Law School so long as this person is employed there, and as a state representative, he has a vote on their budget. So it's a very clear line in the sand for him. I think, again, I don't want to give you my thoughts yet because I've got some thoughts about this as well, but I want to hear your thoughts. 501-403-5276. We certainly don't like it when the left does this to us, right? The cancel culture of the left coming after us for our religious beliefs. Is this different? Are we okay with this? And again, not the comments themselves, but are we okay with calling for these people to lose their jobs or firing these people? I think I've got a good sense of how I feel about it. And I didn't know that immediately, because I do think it's a slippery slope in some ways when we start adopting the tactics of the left. But there is a line here. There is a line here. And to me, the line is getting more and more clear. And I want to hear your thoughts at 501-403-5276. We do have Bob on the line from Greenbrier. Bob, what are your thoughts?
Well, number one, at the very least, it's in very poor taste to celebrate another person's death. In this situation, execution, if you will, assassination. But it's not new, and I'll bring up two quick examples. I, at one time, worked for a gentleman named Bill Gwatney, who was killed August 2008. And I clearly remember the Facebook page on Channel 11 as they were reporting the events as they unfolded. And there were people that were saying, die, Democrat, die, yellow dog, Democrat. And I was appalled. I couldn't believe people would verbalize these comments on a man that had just lost his life. Now, going back, I'm a little older than you.
Bob, we're losing you.
My late sister was teaching school in Houston, and she told me that when they had an announcement over the intercom that the president had been shot, half the school cheered. This was in 1981. My mother taught me, when somebody dies, if you don't have anything nice to say about them, don't say anything at all. And I think that's something society could learn from. There's ways to criticize an individual, their beliefs or whatnot. This guy's not even on the ground yet. I think that those individuals doing things like that could definitely learn some manners, and proper etiquette, and not being so calloused and horrible. I thought we lived in a
Well, sorry, Bob, we lost you there just early, but I think I got the gist of what you were saying. I totally agree. And I think, look, our reaction as citizens and Americans and as a culture, we should not tolerate this. I think the question is, what do we do about it? And how do we react? If you're a believer, if you're conservative, just if you want to see the rhetoric come down a notch, how do we respond? And I think we got to figure that out. We got to have a conversation about that. So stick around with us. We'll have State Representative David Ray right when we come back. Nick Horton filling in for Steve on the Steve Finnegan Show. Welcome back to the Steve Finnegan Show. Newsradio 102.9 KARN. Nick Horton, founder and CEO of Opportunity Arkansas, filling in for the great Steve Finnegan. We want to jump right to it here. We're very privileged and grateful to be joined right now by State Representative David Ray. He represents House District 69 here in Arkansas, covers big chunks of Pulaski County and Faulkner County. I wanted to have him on. Representative, thanks so much for making time.
Nick, it's great to be on the show with you, and always happy to join you on the air.
Yeah, thanks so much. I know you're super busy, and it's a really busy time of year with school starting back and everything else going on in the world. But I saw this Facebook post and this issue with this lady called named Felicia Branch from the Bowen School of Law, and I kind of teased it a little bit in the last segment, but I wanted to wait and let you give us sort of a rundown of what's going on here, and what do we know as far as how the Bowen School, which is taxpayer funded, by the way, this is a taxpayer funded institution, how are they handling this so far?
Yeah, I'm glad you are covering this. This is a developing story. I was at a lunch yesterday, and I could feel my phone buzzing. That feeling when you get several texts in a row, and I started getting all these messages about this, and honestly, when I first saw the posts, I could not believe that this was actually real. So what happened was you had this this professor at the Bowen School of Law, Felicia Branch, who was posting the most abhorrent, disgusting, incendiary things you can possibly imagine about the assassination of Charlie Kirk. In essence, she was saying that the assassination was not just defensible, but that it was a good thing. She was saying that it was a positive thing, that he was an evil person that should have died, and basically said that, imagine all the worst things that you've heard on the news over the last several days regarding this. I mean, what she was posting was far worse. Just totally out of line completely beyond the pale. And so she's been suspended with pay by the law school. I talked to some folks from the university system yesterday, and they told me that there is an investigation pending. So we will see where that goes. But Nick, this is disgusting on a lot of different levels. First of all, this is a person who is, think about it, a law professor. So she is in charge of helping train the next generation of lawyers in Arkansas. And so at the same time, she is literally encouraging them, or she is encouraging others, to support the most lawless behavior you can imagine, which is the murder of an innocent person, a political assassination, killing someone in cold blood simply because you disagree with their opinion. So this is a person that should not be allowed in a classroom. Taxpayers have zero business paying her salary. The law school, I believe, should fire her immediately. And, I'm glad that they're conducting an investigation and have suspended her. That is not sufficient, but it is at least a step in the right direction. I saw earlier today there was a similar situation at Auburn University, and the university there did the right thing, so I'm hoping that our university here will do the right thing as well. But that's basically where things stand at the moment.
Well, and certainly we're seeing this all over the country, and we talked about this in the last segment, that I think it's very easy for us in our conservative Christian culture here in Arkansas, which certainly we're very grateful for, but it's very easy to think about, well, that's probably happening in San Francisco, it's probably happening in New York, it's probably happening in these big liberal cities where there's all this cultural rot. But this is happening right here in Arkansas, in our backyard. And I think, to your point about it being taxpayer funded, and one of the reasons I always love talking to Representative Ray is it's not just sort of the issue that's in front of us, but it's the broader context and sort of how should we be philosophically, principally approaching these issues. What would you say to people who might argue that this is right-wing cancel culture? There's a lot of pushback online about that right now, that, well, look at conservatives. They've been railing against cancel culture for years, but now they're doing it to us, and they're hypocrites. What do you say about that? How is this different? I think I know what I think, but I want to hear your thoughts on how this is different than that, or what role conservatives should play in this dynamic that we're currently in.
Yeah, that's really an awful comparison. Cancel culture is basically when a normal person becomes the victim of a political mob for doing something that is ordinary political behavior. Think about like making a donation to a candidate you support, or telling your friends on Facebook who you plan to vote for in the upcoming election. That's cancel culture. Cancel culture is when a rising high school senior, gets their scholarship taken away because they posted a TikTok video quoting rap lyrics. Okay, this is essentially inciting violence. This is encouraging murder. It is behavior that and yeah, look, you have a right under the First Amendment to say whatever you want. You don't have a right under the First Amendment to have any job that you want, and taxpayers don't have to fund it. I said this on social media yesterday. I told it to a news station in Little Rock last night, and I'll say it again here today. I will not vote for an appropriation to fund the law school budget until this situation is remedied. And I can tell you I've spoken with a lot of my colleagues, both in the House and the Senate, and there's a lot of people that feel the same way. So my message to the university system at the moment is you have a chance to do something about this and stand up for what's right. And if you don't, good luck getting 75 votes to pass your appropriation in next year's fiscal cycle.
Well, I love the way you put that, and I think that's such a good way to think about this. And then the other piece of it, which you alluded to, but where my mind has been, it's a little bit different when you're a taxpayer-funded employee. right? And so much of the cancel culture on the left has been exactly what you said. Oh, you got a Trump sign in your yard? Well, we're coming for you. You got a Trump bumper sticker? We're coming for you. And it's about what you think, and they're going to punish you for having a different idea than you have. This is people, to your point, inciting violence, but also taxpayers are paying for this. And again, we've seen in Springdale and Russellville and a lot of local high school, middle school districts around the state of Arkansas that the same thing is happening, that this is happening from people who are paid with your and my and our listeners' tax dollars. And that to me is on a different level.
Oh, yeah. Well, and I saw a post on Facebook from this particular professor this morning. Her reaction to this is to claim that she's being targeted for her race, which, is totally predictable. I didn't even know what race she was when I got these. There was not a picture of her on her Facebook page, so I had no idea what her race was. This is typical behavior of what happens on the left. They find themselves caught with their hand in the cookie jar, and now they're trying to blame racism. It's like it's so predictable. It's like guarding a basketball player that can only dribble with one hand. You always know which direction they're going to go, and this is the only play they have. And it's clear to me, any person that believes this kind of stuff, they basically have applesauce for brains as far as I'm concerned.
Well, and don't get me started about Bowen Law School, because Bowen Law School, from the outset, when I was a conservative journalist 15 years ago, I was writing stories, 12 years ago, I was writing stories about Bowen Law School. Bowen Law School invented DEI. As far as I'm concerned, they have been using affirmative action and wokeism and radical leftist ideology as long as I've been in the workforce, and that has been a systemic problem.
You're right; they're notoriously left wing. I was just looking at the Twitter feed a minute ago of the former dean DePippa, and his whole Twitter feed for the last few days has just been a constant drumbeat of anti-Charlie Kirk stuff, which just kind of shows you where a lot of these people's mind is at. And I'll be honest with you, Nick, I have had numerous graduates from Bowen Law School reach out to me by text, by email, by private message in the last, 12 to 16 hours since I started posting about this. And they were all thanking me for speaking out, and also reiterating what you just said, which is that the law school, unfortunately, has been a long time cesspool of radical left politics, and it's really past time that they balance it out a bit.
All right, we got to take a quick break. We're talking with State Representative David Ray. He's going to hang around for one more segment after this quick break on the Steve Finnegan Show. We'll be right back. Stick with us. Welcome back to the Steve Finnegan Show. Nick Horton, founder and CEO of Opportunity Arkansas, filling in for Steve. We've got State Representative David Ray on the line from House District 69. We've been talking about this situation with the Bowen Law School. It's caught a lot of media attention, a lot of eyeballs, went a little bit viral. I would encourage you to go over to his Facebook page, State Representative David Ray. You can see the comments for themselves. They're abhorrent, they're atrocious, they're totally and completely indefensible, and good for you, Representative, for bringing attention to this. And I'm hopeful. I don't have a lot of reason for hope based on past history with Bowen Law School, but I hope that they do the right thing and resolve this situation, because it's certainly incredibly offensive. And for me, the bright line here is when you're a taxpayer-funded employee, that is just a different situation. You said it really well in the last segment. We're not going after people for what they think. We're not policing their bumper stickers. It's not that form of cancel culture that the left has popularized and radicalized in recent years. But when you're inciting violence and you're doing it through a taxpayer-funded position, this is something on a totally different level. I'm going to shift gears here, pretty hard shift, so just hang with us. But I want to get your thoughts because I know you have been just a true outspoken leader really on the front lines of tax reform and specifically income tax reform here in the state of Arkansas. We've done a lot. I want to recognize we've done a lot. We've made a lot of progress on getting rid of our state income tax. We were at 6.9% for the top rate just a few years ago. Now we're at 3.9. There was even a moment there, Representative, where we were leading the states around us. I mean, the states that had a state income tax, because we've got, of course, a couple in Tennessee and Texas that don't have any income tax at all. But that didn't last very long because then Louisiana went to 3 flat, and then Mississippi and Oklahoma passed legislation to start winding down to 0, and Missouri cut their income tax. So where are we at now in terms of just the political dynamic around this issue? Where do you see us going? What's the pathway to 0 from here?
Yeah, great questions, Nick. So first of all, you started out by acknowledging that we've done a lot in terms of lowering our income tax burden in Arkansas. I want to just give one anecdote that kind of brings that point home a little stronger because a lot of people hear, oh, we were at 6.9 or 7%, now we're at 3.9. What does that mean in real dollars? Well, let me just tell you, if you are a household where the husband and the wife are making a starting teacher salary in Arkansas, because of these tax cuts, you are now saving almost $2,000 a year just on your income taxes. And that's not one time. That's annually. So every year you're paying almost $2,000 a year less in taxes than you would have been paying. That's real money. That can pay for your kids' Christmas presents. It can cover an unexpected car repair. Help with a medical emergency. There's all sorts of ways that you can start to plan for retirement with that kind of margin in your budget. So it's a huge help to Arkansas families. Where are we at right now? I think that was your next question. So we ended the fiscal year just a couple of months ago. The fiscal year is not the same as the calendar year. The fiscal year ends at the end of June. And we ended the fiscal year with a surplus of about almost $370 million. So, my longstanding belief is anytime you take in $370 million more than you budgeted for, it means that, you collected more from the taxpayers than you needed to. And we need to lower tax rates. At a minimum, we need to lower tax rates commensurate with that amount so that we don't continue to take in more than we need. Look, I think I fully expect us to continue the work that we've done to lower income tax rates. I think we could fairly easily go from 3.9, down to 3.7, 3.6, maybe even 3.5% here in the next 12 months or so. If you just go by a lot of the public statements that the governor and the speaker and others have made, it's sounding more and more like we're probably going to consider some additional tax relief around the fiscal session, which would be, it wouldn't be February because we moved the
I think it's April now.
Yeah. April of next year, I believe, is when that would be. So, we're going to continue on that track. Now, another thing you mentioned is what other states have done, and that's an important consideration because I tell people in the world of economic competitiveness, you're either moving forward or you're falling behind. There's really no such thing as sitting still.
That's right.
And to drive that point home, I would point out that just this year alone, there have been 11 states across the country who have cut their income taxes. That's just in 2025. So you're talking about Kentucky, Idaho, Utah, Mississippi, Kansas, Georgia, Indiana, Montana, Oklahoma, South Carolina, and West Virginia. So on the one hand, this is a really good thing. There's millions of people that live, tens of millions of people that live in all the states that I just mentioned. And I'm very happy for their taxpayers that they're going to be paying less. But at the same time, I want Arkansas to be at the front of the pack. I want us to be leading. I want us to be as economically competitive as possible, because that means we're making our state the best possible place to start a business, grow a business, attract new jobs here. And at the end of the day, this is one of the, income tax is at its core, a penalty on labor and work and productivity. So if you want more of something, you incentivize it. If you want less of something, you punish it. And that's the way income taxes work. They punish work and labor and productivity, and those are all things we want more of.
Very well said. Unfortunate reality, but it is very true. We got to go to a hard break. I want to thank, again, State Representative David Ray from Maumelle right here in this area. Appreciate you so much and what you're doing in the legislature. Thank you for being with us. We'll be right back. Welcome back to the Steve Finnegan Show. Nick Horton, founder and CEO of Opportunity Arkansas, filling in for Steve. Hour 2 begins now. I don't know where hour 1 went. I guess time really does fly when you're having fun. Thanks again to State Representative David Ray, House District 69, represents large parts of Pulaski County and Faulkner County right here in central Arkansas. We talked with him about the situation at Bowen Law School, and we're just starting to see more and more and more of this. And it's crazy when you think about that it's been a week since Charlie Kirk's heinous, horrific, disgusting assassination, and yet it may be all we talk about today. It's everywhere. It's all over the news. The text line is full of dozens of texts coming in. Every time I open social media or any sort of traditional media, it's all anyone is talking about. And I think that says a ton about him and his impact and his legacy. I shared some of this in the first hour. I didn't follow him very closely. It wasn't because I didn't like him or didn't agree with him. He just wasn't on my radar. He was so focused on high schools and colleges and the young people, of which I am no longer one. But I tell you what, I know a lot of young people that followed him. We've had some interns at Opportunity Arkansas that were dramatically impacted by him and his legacy. And it's so clear. It's so clear, the response from churches and communities and conservatives all over this country. The lasting impact that he made. And I'll say this, I've learned more from Charlie Kirk since he passed than I ever did before. And I'm very grateful for that. Because what I know about him now and what I've heard and seen in videos and speeches that he gave that are just everywhere, unavoidable. I'll be honest, there were times this weekend where I was just so overwhelmed with the heaviness of it all that I didn't want to see any more of it. And I don't mean that in a disparaging way. I just needed a break from it, mentally, emotionally. And I just kept seeing it. And every time I saw it, I was encouraged, because every time I saw it, he was sharing the gospel. He was sharing the truth. And in the first hour, I got into some of this. I didn't quite say what I wanted to say, because I've been wrestling through this idea of, like, are we gone as a country? Like, is there really any coming back from this? When you have people celebrating and desecrating vigils. And as State Representative Ray said in the last hour, they're not just excusing it, they're condoning it. They're advocating for more of this. And what's really sad is most of us that are in this world, that are engaged in this fight, aren't surprised. I think I'm a little surprised by how just blatant they are. That they're not even trying to hide it anymore. That surprises me a little bit. But if you've followed leftist ideology and you've seen what it does, the woke mind virus and all of this, we shouldn't be surprised. But let me say this, because I don't know. I don't have some. I know what I know is very clear. Is very simple. There is no government solution for any of this. There's no political solution. I think at this point I'm in support of firing these teachers and these people that are advocating for this. Certainly, if you're around kids and you're advocating for violence, you should be fired on the spot. Shouldn't even be a question. So there's a place for that. There's a place for accountability for that. But those are Band-Aids, right? In a lot of ways. It's just treating the symptom. It's not solving the deep problem that's at the root of all of this, which is darkness and evil. And for those of us that, again, are in the fight, that are engaged in the industry, that can be tough because everybody wants a quick fix. Everybody wants a solution. Everybody wants a piece of legislation or a tweet or you name it that can solve this problem. But none of that is going to fix it. And so the only way to fix it is to fix the hearts and minds of the people in our country. And there's no bill that can do that. There's no tweet that can do that. There's no amount of press releases or media statements or firings or any of that. And again, some of that's appropriate. I'm not diminishing that per se. But this problem is so much more widespread than so many of us have realized. And the short answer is, frankly, no, there is no hope without Christ. There is none. There is none. And the sooner we realize that, I was a kid. It's a little eerie when you think about the timing of all this. It was the day before 9/11 when this all happened, and then we woke up and it was the anniversary of 9/11. I think it made it a lot heavier even in some ways. I was a kid when 9/11 happened. I think I was in 8th grade, but I still remember it. Still remember where I was. Remember what class I was in, the teacher that came in and told us about it, and we turned the TV on and we watched the second plane hit the building. And people talk about this now just as this folklore of like, gosh, remember those days after 9/11? They canceled the football games. People canceled their social events and schedules. Everybody. I mean, I was young. I was 12 or 13. But everybody had an American flag on their car. Bumper stickers went crazy. There were patriotic rallies. There were prayer vigils. I remember people that I sort of knew from the community that went up to New York and helped do cleanup missions and minister to families. It was real. And people still talk about it. And 24 years later, people still talk about how sweet those moments were, how special those moments were. And truly, again, it's cliche. It's as cliche can be, but there was no left, there was no right, there was just America. Americans coming together. And it lasted for probably 6 weeks. 6 to 8 weeks. And then everybody was kind of back at each other's throats. And we just went right back to the way of doing things. And frankly, again, when you look back and you can see this slow decline, at times a rapid decline of our culture and our country. But how do we sustain that? We're in a moment. I say all that to say we're in a moment like that now. There's prayer vigils happening all over the country, all over the state of Arkansas. And it's not. Look, I'm just going to say it because I'm sick of seeing all these people on the internet diminishing it and dismissing it and talking about how, well, it was just one person and you know, he was a bigot and blah, blah, blah. Stop it. Just stop. A week later, I still don't really fully understand why it affected me as deeply as it did. But it wasn't just one person. And as I said in the first hour, this was a specific, calculated, targeted, focused attack for a reason. And it doesn't make one person's life or soul more valuable than anyone else's. But the way that it feels, the way that it hits is different. Because of the intention behind it. The intention was to take out someone who spoke the truth, to silence someone who spoke the truth, and not just political truth. Because I'm tired of hearing that too, from the left and from skeptics and just casual observers of, well, I don't know why people are trying to over spiritualize and make this into some sort of religious attack, because it was. Because it was. Charlie Kirk was in Korea 2 weeks ago preaching the gospel. And he was on college campuses all over this country preaching the gospel to a lot of kids, frankly, who'd probably never heard it before. And they saw someone who was willing to stand up and go toe-to-toe with people screaming at him and yelling curse words at him and wishing harm on him. And he said, you know what? In so many of these videos, he said, God loves you. And Christ loves you. And there's hope for you. And that's why they killed him. That's why. We got to go to a break. Nick Horton filling in for Steve Finnegan. Stick around. We're back on the Steve Finnegan Show. Nick Horton, founder and CEO of Opportunity Arkansas. Boy, time is really rolling here. I guess when I start talking, I guess my wife is right. When I start talking, I just lose all track of time. I want to go. We got lots of texts. I'm going to try. I promise to get to some of these here before the end of the day. Some really good thoughts from folks. If you want to be a part of the show, 501-403-5276. That's 501-403-5276. You can call or text. And we do have a caller on the line, Miss Liz from Hot Springs. Liz, what's on your mind? Thanks for calling.
Yes, they did this once before to a young man in his 30s. He tried to spread the word of God and his love, and they killed him to silence him and intimidate his people that were following him. Do you know who I'm talking about?
I have a pretty good idea, but why don't you tell us?
Jesus Christ.
Yeah.
They tried to kill his message, but it went forward. And the same people also shouted out, we want Barabbas, who was a murderer, to be free. Same kind of people. The Antichrist was alive then, and it is today.
Well, I appreciate your call, Miss Liz from Hot Springs. I mean, there's certainly a lot of parallels. I've seen a lot of parallels from JFK, MLK. I think a lot of those hold true. I think, look, certainly, again, I said this in the last segment, Charlie Kirk was extremely outspoken about his faith, and he was not scared to go toe-to-toe with people that he knew wished him harm, that he knew were full of darkness, right? We know that. I mean, it was very evident from everything that he did. I will say, and this may get me in trouble, John Luke, you may have to help me out here, but I think we got to be cautious a little bit with comparing people to Jesus. Okay, so I'll just put that out there. I love Charlie Kirk. I think he was full of the Spirit of Christ and the Holy Spirit. But Jesus gave his life willingly, right? And he came to earth for that purpose. So I understand, I think, Miss Liz, the intention of the Spirit, what she was trying to say. I think we do have to be a little bit cautious about deifying people. And I think Charlie Kirk, if he was here, I feel pretty confident saying he would agree with that. He was not a perfect person. I think there's times, and you could see even in some of his content, where he lost his cool at times. He went a little bit too far, maybe at times. But his mission was always, from what I can see and what I've observed, is to be like Christ and to point people to Christ. We got a handful of text messages here. I want to get in as many of these as we can. We got a text here from Karen. She says, "Thank you for not diminishing the true horror of what happened, an assassination. Only Tyler knows why he felt he had to take this step. That he had to know he would end his life as he knew it, one way or the other. The rhetoric on the radical left is obnoxious and full of lies. But to an unhappy person, it's a lifeline. I guess they can feel part of something larger than themselves." We got a text here from John as well. "I really like Charlie Kirk, but I think it's a dangerous idea to put anyone in the same category as Christ." Yeah, I think that's well said, John. I agree with that. That's kind of what I was trying to allude to there with Miss Lynn, Miss Liz from Hot Springs. I just think we got to be really careful anytime we're comparing someone to him. That's certainly prudent, I would say. We got a bunch of texts here. Pam Bondi needs to go from a 2222 number. "Marxists have taken control of the Democrats and the schools. Pentagon knew 50 years ago." Let me see. There was one here from a 5276 number. "We already have one teacher in jail for the brutal murders at Devil Den State Park. Teachers who openly support murder don't need to be teaching my kids." And that, I think, we need to hone in on a little bit more here. Because we had this conversation with State Representative David Ray in the last hour. And this idea that you've got public school teachers. I mean, you got the Bowen Law School teacher, which is what he was talking about and has been focused on, and grateful for that. But you also have school teachers, public school teachers at the local level in Russellville, in Springdale. Those are just the ones I've seen. I'm sure it's happening all over the state that are celebrating this heinous, horrific act. And the idea that those people, those adults, are in charge of supervising Arkansas kids and children, that should really scare the socks off of us. We should be deeply, deeply concerned about that. Those aren't college students at Russellville Middle School. Those aren't adults that are being exposed. And I say exposed because that's what they're saying online. God can only know what they are saying in the classroom behind closed doors when parents and other adults aren't listening. So if they're willing to say this type of vitriol, and I'll pull up some of the posts and maybe we can read some of these in the next half hour. But if they're willing to advocate for violence publicly, it should deeply, deeply concern us about what they're saying behind closed doors to kids that are extremely impressionable and vulnerable at those young ages. Talk about a safety issue. That is a whole other level in my mind. So I'd love to hear, if you want to call or text the show, 501-403-5276. Have you seen in your area, in your school district, have you seen this type of rhetoric coming out on social media or otherwise from teachers, administrators? Would love to see and hear examples of that to the degree that it's happening elsewhere in the state. 501-403-5276. If you have any examples of public school teachers, superintendents, other taxpayer-funded employees that are celebrating the death of Charlie Kirk and advocating for violence, the public needs to know about that. And we'll share some of that in the next half hour. Nick Horton, founder and CEO of Opportunity Arkansas, filling in for Steve Finnegan. We got half an hour left. We'll be right back. Newsradio 102.9 KARN. Nick Horton, founder and CEO of Opportunity Arkansas, filling in for Steve Finnegan. Steve, I hope you are enjoying some time off, recharging your batteries, and I know you'll be back in no time. I'm, as always, just super impressed with your audience, how engaged they are. We've had so many texts and phone calls and tweets and everything else. We've spent the bulk of the show today talking, appropriately so, about the Charlie Kirk assassination, what it means for our country, really, frankly, just still processing that together in a lot of ways. And I'm happy to come back to that. I think I'd love to talk more about that, probably even tomorrow. It's something, there's so many layers to it, and we're really just very early on in learning about the situation. Obviously, charges were filed this week, so we've seen some text messages and learned a lot more about the alleged shooter's background. And there's going to be a lot more coming on this. I do hope, just to sort of close the loop on all of that for now, I do hope that I hope that this moment, this sentiment, this reflection that we're all in, I hope it doesn't just stop tomorrow or next week or the week after that. And we all have a part to play in that. And I don't say that as like, oh, we got to keep Charlie's legacy alive. We got to keep our eyes clear and our hearts clear about where we are as a country. And I do think, I don't mean to be facetious, I do think we should keep Charlie's legacy alive, because Charlie's legacy was one of truth. Truth about who Christ is, truth about what makes our country great, and the ways that we've veered off from that at times. But this moment of reflection and just gasp that we're all feeling, we got to sit in this for a while if we're going to find our way out of it. And again, there are no government solutions for this. As for most of our societal problems, there's no piece of legislation, there's no bill, there's no speech that can solve this. And that's frustrating, right? I mean, I get that. I'm with you. I want a quick fix. We all do. We want to hit the 30-second button on the microwave and have everything solved. But that's just not going to happen. And so I hope, if you're not, I hope you're a part of a great truth-preaching, Bible-believing church that is equipping you not every Sunday, but every day to reach out to those around you, reflect in your own heart ways that you can be more like Christ. Because that's where it starts. It's easy. It's so easy. And again, I'm so conflicted by so much of it because I want justice. Christ stood for justice, right? But it's so easy to start just finger pointing at everyone else, and it starts right here. It starts with you. I'm going to take another hard pivot here because I do want to talk about a few things that are happening here in the state. Opportunity Arkansas, my organization, our organization that I started 3 years ago, we just had our 3-year anniversary. In a lot of ways, I hate to compare, but just if you're not familiar with us, we stand for a lot of the values and principles that Charlie Kirk fought for. Limited government, families, family preservation, fighting against what I call the scourge of government dependency. And one of the things that we talked about in the last hour with State Representative David Ray was our income tax. And he mentioned so clearly, so to the point, that one of the things that makes our state income tax so atrocious is that it punishes people for working. It punishes people for trying to earn money and feed their families and trying to do better. And as a conservative, I don't like really any taxes, to be honest. That question comes up a lot. Well, you want to get rid of the state income tax? I mean, what are you going to replace it with? Well, can we also just consider that maybe government could do with less? Do less with less? Some people like to say do more with less. I want government to actually do less with less. That's my goal. But with inflation and the cost of everything being so through the roof, and families are working extra jobs and working extra hours and just grinding and grinding, trying to get ahead. And then every 2 weeks when you get that paycheck, state government says, I'll take some of that. Yep, I'll take 4% of that. I'll take a little bit. We're going to use that to pay some government employees or pay a new government contractor, or, you know what? It'd be really great if we could have some new football stadiums and have a film festival and things that aren't inherently bad, right? But when you're a struggling family in the state of Arkansas and you're just trying to get by and feed your kids, it's just one more thing. It's just one more way that state government just kicks you down off that ladder that you're trying to climb. So we've done a lot of work on this at Opportunity Arkansas. We're a state-based policy organization. Our mission is to simplify government. Government shouldn't be complicated, shouldn't be confusing. The rules of the road should be very, very clear. And to solve generational problems, because I believe those are two pieces of the formula for how we can renew Arkansas and make Arkansas the land of opportunity again. And not just the slogan. I mean, I'd love to bring back the slogan, honestly, make that our state motto again, but actually make Arkansas a place where people want to come and stay and live and raise their families. In our view, there is no bigger threat to that and impediment to that than the state income tax. And so we've done a lot of work. And I was on, for those of you that listen on Wednesdays, I'm on Toby's show every Wednesday morning, 7:40 every Wednesday. And we talk about the latest and greatest things that are happening in Arkansas, in the political world, from a policy perspective. And so one of the things we talked about last week, but I just think it's so significant that it's worth revisiting, is some brand new polling that we just released. Now, I want to say a couple things about polling before we unpack the results. Polling is not everything. We don't do polling at Opportunity Arkansas because we're sticking our finger to the wind and trying to figure out what people want, and then we're going to just cater to that, right? That's how polling has sort of gotten this bad rap, because frankly, that's how most politicians, I would say, use polling. Well, what do people think about this issue? Well, okay, that's what I'm going to do. Now, I will also say That's not necessarily a bad thing either, right? Because if your legislator or your congressman or your governor or whoever it is polling an issue to find out what you think, well, they're kind of doing their job because they represent you. So there is sort of this cynicism around polling for whatever reason. But for us at Opportunity Arkansas, I mean, our hope is that we can use polling to cut through the noise. There's so much noise out there. And I don't have to tell this audience that. But there's so much noise. There's so much fake news. There's so much bad information from the media. And one of the areas where that's a real problem is within tax reform. Because there's this idea that if you want to cut income taxes, you're only trying to help the rich. You're only doing this to help the billionaires. And you're going to starve state government, shut down state government, and everything's going to collapse, and there's going to be no roads, and it's just always this doomsday scenario. Well, let me tell you something. And we just released this. You can see it on our website. It's on our social media. We did a poll of Arkansas voters, and we've polled this about twice a year for the last few years because we want to see trends. And again, we do actually care what you guys think, what voters think about these issues. And when the media says, oh, it's just for the rich, and they want you to believe, and they convince you that people believe that it's just for the rich, we want to have actual data from actual people that tell the actual story. And so here's what we found, and you can find this on our website. From August of 2023 until now, this poll was done last month in August, there has been a 16-point net jump in support for income tax repeal over just the last 2 years. 16-point jump. So what does that mean? So the number of people, the percentage of people that support getting rid of our state income tax has increased. But also, at the same time, opposition for getting rid of our state income tax has increased. Now, context, what's been happening over the last 2 years in the state of Arkansas? We've been cutting income taxes at a record pace. We've done more than $1 billion of income taxes over the last 2 years. And as that has happened, the media and the naysayers and the haters have continued to say, people don't want this. You're going to shut down state government. We're not going to be able to pay for things. This is just for the rich and all of this hysteria. But guess what? There has been a 16-point net increase in support for income tax repeal. We also found, not really surprising, if you're paying attention, if you work, if you look at your paycheck, but people don't really like paying taxes. And this is across party lines. A majority of Arkansas voters, 52%, said that taxes are too high. Just 4% of voters in Arkansas said that they think taxes are too low. 4%. I'm getting a signal here for a break. We're going to dig a little bit more into this poll. We got one segment left. I hope you'll stick around. Nick Horton filling in for Steve Finnegan. Hang with us. All right, we're back. One last segment here on the Steve Finnegan Show. I will be back tomorrow. I think I failed to mention that so far here today, but we'll be back tomorrow, 4 to 6 again, filling in for Steve. Nick Horton of Opportunity Arkansas, founder and CEO. We're talking about some of this income tax polling. I've probably said more than you wanted to hear, but I do think this is just so important to realize, to stop and realize through all of the noise, the last 3 years, really. Now, we've slowed down. We can talk about that. I'll talk about that a little bit more tomorrow, maybe, because I am concerned about where we're at right now with income tax reform and repeal. We've got to have a clear plan to get to zero. And it really seems like we were really aggressive. We were really aggressive for a while. And right now, for whatever reason, we can speculate about that. But for whatever reason, we have definitely slowed down. and I'm not sure why. Certainly not what I would prefer, and I think a lot of you. And based on this polling, frankly, that really is a lot of the point of the results of this poll that we found, where we talked to 500, roughly, I think it was exactly 500 voters, actually, here in the state of Arkansas, and they said they think taxes are too high, and the support for fully getting rid of our work-punishing income tax here in the state of Arkansas is now over 60%. It's now nearly 2 out of 3 Arkansas voters that want to get rid of our state income tax. I'd love to hear from you, by the way. We probably don't have time for another call, but if you want to text in 501-403-5276, tell me what you think about the state income tax. Y'all are a very well-informed audience, so you probably realize this, but we have 2 neighboring states that have 0. Tennessee and Texas, 0 state income tax. And I can't tell you the number of people, friends, family, who have picked up and moved to one of those states specifically for that reason. And there's all the contradictions, or the consternation about, well, how are we going to pave the roads? How are we going to pay the teachers? What are we going to do, Nick? I mean, we got to have the money. And to all of those people, I would say, drive through the state of Tennessee. Just spend an hour. Get past Memphis and go anywhere past Memphis and keep driving. Because their roads, we drive through Tennessee 2 or 3 or 4 times a year to go see family. And their roads are nicer than ours. And their schools perform better across the board than ours. And by the way, they didn't expand Medicaid through Obamacare like Arkansas did. So they have significantly fewer people on welfare than Arkansas does. And they have significantly fewer state employees per capita than Arkansas does. And they're doing all of that, and they're figuring it out and seeing record job growth, record inward migration all across the board, and they're doing it all without a state income tax. So it falls a little flat. I know Texas is like this super mega state. It's like its own country, right? So maybe that's not as great of a comparison. But Tennessee, it's not that different in a lot of ways, culturally and across the board. And they're figuring it out without a state income tax. So don't tell me that we can't do it. We can do it. We just have to commit ourselves to doing it. And it might mean that we need to spend a little bit less in a few areas. But I'll tell you the other thing, and we released a research report on this about 2 years ago. But what's happened, back to this idea of like you're not getting the whole story. I know that doesn't shock this audience, but you're not getting the whole story from the media. Sorry if I'm the first one telling you that. But you're not. And you get all this hysteria about what's going to happen if we cut the state income tax or if we finally get it all the way down to 0. But what we found using state data, it's very straightforward. You can find it on our website, opportunityarkansas.org. Every time we have cut income taxes in the last 5 years, sales tax revenue has gone up. Every single time. It has continued to grow. Every single time. And it makes sense when you just stop and think about it and do a little bit of critical thinking on this topic, that if you let people keep more of their money, and if you don't punish people for creating jobs, and you don't punish people for moving into Arkansas and investing their money here or keeping their money here and instead leaving and going to Tennessee and Texas and Florida and other states with no income tax, guess what? They respond to that. And they keep their money here. And they spend their money here. And a lot of that money comes back to the state through sales tax and property tax and all of these other revenue streams. And the naysayers, the haters that want to keep our state income tax, they don't want to look at that side of the ledger. They only want to look at the lost, quote, lost revenue from reducing the income tax. But you got to look at the whole picture. And you got to realize that when you let people keep more of their money, a lot of that money is going to come back. And we're going to have more growth and more jobs, and we're going to be more competitive with the states around us. And we're not going to be punishing people for working anymore. That's what gets me really excited. We got to go. We got a hard break. Nick Horton, I'll be back tomorrow. Thank you so much for tuning in. We'll see you tomorrow at 4.